Hi, so how to get a grade 9 in AQA English Language, Paper 1, Question 3. This is the structure question and we're going to be working on the November 2020 paper, but the question's been updated. Yes, in the past, the question sounded something like this. How has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader? Now the question focuses on one particular effect of the structure, and in this case is going to be mystery. How has the writer structured the text to create a sense of mystery? In some ways this is, I think this is more straightforward. It gives you something to focus on. So this is what the question will look like. You now need to think about the whole of the source. The text is from the beginning of a novel. How has the writer structured the text to create a sense of mystery? You could write about what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning of the source, how and why the writer changes this focus as the source develops, and any other structural features that create mystery. So this is the extract. I will read it to you, but if you prefer to read it to yourself, turn the sound down and just speed things along. So again, it tells you that it's from the beginning of a novel by Judith Allnott, published in 2015. It's set in a house that used to be part of a 19th century silk factory. Rosie and her two children, Sam and Cara, now live in the house. It was on their first day at the house that Rosie saw the stranger child. Standing at the sink, her hands deep in suds, Rosie was overwhelmed by the tasks that lay ahead of her. Tired after the long drive from London the evening before, she gazed vaguely at the sunlit, overgrown garden where Sam and Cara were playing. The sash window had old glass that blunted the image, wavering the straightness of fence and washing line, pulling things out of shape. Sam was kneeling beside the patch of earth that Rosie had cleared for him, making hills and valleys for his matchbox cars and trucks by digging with an old tablespoon, and Cara was toddling from bush to bush with a yellow plastic watering can. Through the antique glass, Rosie watched them stretch and shrink as they moved, as if she were looking through ripples. She closed her eyes, glad of a moment of calm after the trauma of the last few days. Letting go of the plate she was holding, she spread her tense fingers, allowing the warmth of the water to soothe her. When she opened her eyes, another child was there. Rosie had made a quick check of the unfamiliar garden before letting the children go out to play. The bottom half of the garden was an overgrown mess, a muddle of trees and shrubs. An ancient mulberry tree stood at the centre. Its massive, twisted branches drooped to the ground in places, its knuckles in the earth like a gigantic, malformed hand. The wintry sun hung low in the sky, and the gnarled growth threw long, twisted shadows across the undergrowth within its cage. The trunk of the tree was snarled with the tangled ivy that grew up through the broken bricks and chunks of cement, choking it. The path that led down towards the fence at the bottom, which marked the garden off from an orchard beyond, disappeared into a mass of nettles and brambles before it reached the padlocked door. A little girl was sitting back on her heels beside a clump of daisies that grew against the fence. She had her back to Rosie and was holding tight to the handle of a large wicker basket that stood on the ground beside her. Cara seemed unfazed by the girl's presence and continued to move, engrossed along the row of plants. Rosie bent forward to look through the clearest of the panes and peered closer. The child was small, maybe around 8 or 9, although something in the tense hunch of her shoulders made her seem older. Her hair hung down her back in a matted, dusty-looking plait, and she was wearing dressing-up clothes, an ankle-length dress and pinafore in washed-out greys and tans, like a homemade Cinderella costume. Where on earth had she come from? She must be a neighbour's child, but how had she got in? The wooden fences that separated the gardens between each of the houses and the terrace were high, surely too high for a child to climb. The child glanced over her shoulder, back towards the houses, a quick, furtive movement, as if she was scanning the upper windows of the row, afraid of being overlooked. Rosie caught a glimpse of her face, pale and drawn with anxiety, before the girl turned back and reached forward to quickly tuck a piece of trailing white cloth into the basket. Almost unconsciously, Rosie registered that the girl was left-handed like herself, and that there was something animal-like in her movements. Quick, like the darting of a mouse or the flit of a sparrow. Some small, dumb creature that moves fast to blend into the background. Something wasn't right here. She had seen distress in those eyes. Rosie turned away, dried her hands hurriedly, and slipped on her flip-flops. She would go gently, raise no challenge about her being in the garden, but say hello and try to find out what was the matter. Maybe if she pointed out that her mother would be worrying where she was, she could persuade the girl to let her take her home. When she stepped outside, the child was gone. Hey, so if you want to move from a mid-grade to a grade 9 in question 3, you need to use subject terminology accurately. Examiners do not want vague phrases like "it makes the reader want to read on." Obviously, all writers want the readers to read on. It doesn't actually tell you anything. You've got to be much more precise. Yes, they want precision with the structure. And in this lesson, we're going to look at 3 structural devices that you can use for this question. So the first one, and I think that you can use this for every question 3 question, the focus shifts, the changes in what the writer draws our attention to. At the beginning, we've got Rosie at the sink. It's ordinary, it's mundane. She's just got her hands in, she's feeling a bit tired, a bit as if she's just catching a moment. Then there's the middle, the description of the garden, which creates a slightly uncanny atmosphere, slightly sinister perhaps. And then we've got the focus on the stranger child, which is unexplained. So why move our attention this way? Why these focus shifts from the everyday to the sinister to the uncanny? What's the writer trying to do? Why start with something ordinary and mundane? Why give it a very sort of realistic start? So these are the sorts of questions you need to be asking yourself, because that's the way you go deeper. Okay, let's have a think about this. Device 2, zooming in and out. Just as a filmmaker will sometimes do a wide shot and then zoom in, so writers can do the same in their writing. It is like a camera lens, so they can start off with a wide shot and then give some close-up details. And in here we see some zooming in on the girl's odd details, the dusty plait, the washed-out clothes, the furtive movements and glances. And then you think, what's the effect of that? Why do that? Well, it certainly makes the child seem more vivid. It makes almost the child seem a bit more real, doesn't it, with these particular details? But they're unsettling details. She's not dressed normally, is she? So this addition, the zooming in on these details, does increase this sense of mystery. It does create unanswered questions in the reader's mind. So device 3 is a cyclical structure. So cyclical structure is where the ending connects back to the beginning in some way. At the start, we've got the girl suddenly appearing, and then at the end, she disappears. So why finish in this way? Why have this cyclical structure? It does come full circle, doesn't it? But there are no answers. We as the reader are left with questions. The mystery is unresolved, so the reader's left uneasy. And this is a really effective technique that writers will often use, creating questions and not answering them, because human beings hate having unanswered questions. So we always want to have our questions answered. So it will propel us to find resolution. Okay, so it will this sense of mystery that's created will intrigue us and draw us into the text. Okay, putting it all together. So the summary of the 3 devices, there are many more devices, but these are just 3 we're looking at today. The focus shifts, so from Rosie to the garden to the girl. There's zooming in, the unsettling, particularly on the unsettling details of the girl. And there's the cyclical structure, the appearance and the disappearance. And all three of these combined help create this sense of mystery. So here we've got a grade 9 response. We'll have a read through that. And I always say, if there are any phrases that you think, yes, I really like those phrases, I'm going to use those in my own writing, feel free, copy them down. That's the way we learn. The writer structures the text to create a sustained sense of mystery by carefully controlling focus, perspective, and the resolution of the episode. At the beginning, the focus on Rosie's mundane domestic routine establishes normality, but this is quickly unsettled when the narrative shifts outward to the garden, described in oppressive, almost hostile terms. This structural shift from the ordinary to the sinister primes the reader to anticipate something disturbing. Did you see, they're not just saying the focus shifts from the mundane to the garden, they're actually looking at the effect of that shift. The mystery intensifies as the focus moves again, this time to the sudden appearance of the stranger child. By delaying her introduction until after the unsettling description of the setting, the writer creates a sense that the girl has emerged out of this menacing environment, making her presence feel uncanny. The narrative then zooms in on unsettling details, her dusty plait, washed-out clothes, and furtive movements. This structural narrowing of focus forces the reader to scrutinise her, means to look really carefully at her. But the more detail we're given, the stranger she appears, which deepens our unease or our curiosity. Finally, the writer uses a cyclical structure. The child's abrupt arrival is mirrored by her equally abrupt disappearance. Ending with this unresolved absence denies the reader closure. In other words, we don't get answers to our questions, do we? The structural choice to circle back from sudden appearance to sudden disappearance leaves unanswered questions. Who was she? Was she even real? By refusing to resolve these questions, the writer sustains an atmosphere of mystery and compels the reader to keep speculating. Taken together, these structural devices, shifting focus, zooming in, and circularity, do more than simply make us want to read on. They deliberately unsettle the reader, blur the boundary between reality and imagination, and foreground the theme of the uncanny, ensuring that the sense of mystery dominates the passage from beginning to end. Okay, so some really, really, really thoughtful, well-developed arguments here, and some great use of language taken together, zooming in, shifting focus, bringing all the devices together at the end. That's all high-level stuff. So key takeaways for grade 9. Use subject terminology and, really importantly, explain the effect in the question. So what effect are they asking you to focus on? In this case, it was mystery. And keep coming back to that and track the passage from the beginning to the middle and the end. How does it change? And if you found this lesson useful, download my free P.1 Top Tips Guide. The link's in the description. And subscribe because I'm going to be giving more help on past papers, which I'm updating for the 2026 onwards specification. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you soon.